Namaste, 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 namaste. I brought something tonight from Mother to begin our evening because there's a line in Savitri in which Sri Aurobindo writes, and Mother writes, what I call being on the path is being in a state of consciousness in which only union with the divine has any value. This union is the only thing worth living, the sole object of aspiration. Everything else has lost all value and is not worth seeking. So there is no longer any question of renouncing it because it is no longer an object of desire. As long as union with the divine is not the thing for which one lives, one is not yet on the path. It is true that the path is very long, but for one who follows it with sincerity, it is really very interesting. And then I think last time we talked a little bit about the snow in Aurobindo. Did I not speak to you about that? Snow? Okay, so this is from Mother again. In Algeria, I saw not a few things like that, very interesting ones. And there, just because there was a certain atmosphere of a little more real knowledge, it could be said, there were little entities, as, for example, entities which handled snow, you see, which produced snow, and which could come, enter a room, and tell someone, now, snow should fall here. It had never snowed in that country, never. Snow? You are joking. So near the Sahara, it is going to snow? It must be because they have planted fir trees on the mountain. And when we see fir trees, we come. The fir trees are there to call us, so we come. And so, you see, there was a discussion. And the little being went away with the permission to bring snow. And when it had gone, there was a little pool of snow water on the floor. Melted snow, which had turned into water. It was physical. And the mountain was covered with snow. In Algeria, it is very near the Sahara. You go down a few kilometers and you are at the Sahara. Someone had playfully covered all the hills with fir trees. The fir tree belongs to cold countries. Why do you call us? We are coming. All this is a true story. It is not an invention, Mother. We had a most beautiful home choir tonight. Maybe 150 more people. There was such a spirit of oneness, much as we have here in our satsang group. When we don't feel isolated and alone, separated, cut off from each other, but a true part of a holy group, the company of the holy, as satsang is often called. And it is that that is the reason why I come. This group will grow, of course, and I will go middle of March back to the US, but then I will come again in July. and I will be here for 7.5 months in which we can all be together. Now, this is Aurobindo Part 6 that I put together about aspiration and a small group who came to see Mother each week. Mother says, but there is a long way to go between what we are and what must be. And for that, we must be very flexible, never losing sight of the goal, but knowing that we cannot reach it at one bound and that we must find the way. Well, that is much more difficult, even more difficult than to make the inner discovery. Truly speaking, that should have been made before coming here. For there is a starting point when you have found within yourself the light that never wavers, the presence which can guide you with certitude. Then you become aware that constantly, in everything that happens, there is something to be learned, and that in the present state of matter, there is always a progress to be made. That is how one should come, eager to find out at every minute the progress to be made, to have a life that wants to grow and perfect itself. That is what the collective ideal of Aurobindo should be. A life that wants to grow and perfect itself. And above all, not in the same way for everyone. Each one has his own way. We see this in Sri Aurobindo and Mother again and again. And we have to truly realize and respect each other, because your way is not my way, and your way is not his way or her way, and we have to honor that. In fact, we have to be so flexible, as Mother says here, that we can learn from each other at every moment. And one of the most powerful and beautiful experiences I have been given is to be able to learn from everyone at each moment. Every day. Every day when I'm in association with someone, on the phone, on the internet, I am learning. And it is a marvelous, marvelous blessing. Because then one always remains young. Mother says, remain young, never stop striving towards perfection. You have all read this, I think. Mother continues, well, now there are 30 of you. It is difficult, isn't it? When there are 30,000 of you, it will be easier. Interesting. Because naturally, there will be many more possibilities. You are the pioneers. You have the most difficult task. But I feel it is the most interesting one. Because you must establish in a concrete, durable, and growing way the attitude that is needed to truly be an Aurobildian. To learn every day the lesson that is needed to truly be an Aurobildian. To learn every day the lesson of the day. Each sunrise is an opportunity to make a discovery. So, with that state of mind, you find out. Everyone does. We are still so far from that in the collective, but I think not so far from it individually. I think we are all making progress individually, or we wouldn't be here. It wouldn't be interesting for us anymore. This supramental force that descended on 29th February 1956. We honor and attend darshan every February 29th, occurring every 4 years. And for me, this is one of the great secrets that few people know, is that Mother breaking down the golden door and allowing the supramental force to fully enter the earth in 1956 has created the great change. Now, Sri Aurobindo brought the supermind into his body, and he had to sacrifice his body and put it in the earth to establish there the first supramental force. But for 23 years more, Mother had to bring it down into the physical. And you all know how she worked on the cells of her body, convincing them to be transformed. And she said the most extraordinary thing to us. She said, by a strange, I'm not getting the word right now, the cells that were transformed in her body would go into every body that was open. We may not be aware of it yet, but they're in us. They're working in us, transforming us when we least are aware of it. Because our minds are still so busy, and the comings and goings of life, the daily work, the usual things, cooking, eating meals, cleaning house, and all of this. I just did a series on, I didn't do a series, I'm teaching a young Russian girl to read this series. It's just 2 pages, in which Sri Aurobindo speaks to a disciple and says, if you can be aware before you begin the work of the mother, and be aware and grateful when you finish the work, that is a very good beginning. And then he sort of humorously says, and if you can be aware of her in the middle, that's very good too. But he says it is progressive. It comes slowly at first, and then it begins to be more frequent. I can tell you that most of the day now, it's there with me. Somehow I'm finding myself calling her when I'm doing whatever, any task. Maybe I'm just saying ma, ma, ma. Maybe I'm saying mother. Maybe I'm saying Mira. Maybe I'm just calling Sri Aurobindo. Not praying as such, just remembering them and putting into effect their force in this body, which so needs it. And the body needs activity. If you keep it inactive, it will begin to revolt by becoming sick and so on. It needs an activity. It really needs an activity like planting flowers, building a house, something really material. You must feel it. Some people do exercises, some people ride bicycles. There are countless activities. But in your little group, this is the 30 people that she's talking about, you must all come to an agreement so that each one can find the activity which suits his temperament, his nature, and his need. Most interesting statement. But not with ideas. Ideas are not much good. Ideas give you preconceptions, for example. That is a good work. That work is not worthy of me. And all that sort of nonsense. There is no bad work. There are only bad workers. All work is good when you know how to do it in the right way. Everything. I don't believe I told you this before, but when I was going to leave the ashram and I had to write letters to Mother, I wrote to her that she had turned my life upside down just by seeing her, and how she put into me the initiation. And so I wrote her and I said, Mother, I don't know what to do anymore. Should I continue studying voice, or should I study choir directing and become a choir director? Mother's answer is very interesting. I quote you literally. One or the other. Because the important thing is not so much what you choose, but the spirit in which you will do it. Keep living in you the spirit of consecration, and all will be all right. I was 23, I didn't know what consecration was. It took many years, many years to learn what consecration is. But she saw that, and she saw what each of us had come for, what was possible, what would possibly be. She saw the past, the present, and the future in each of us. But she does say, because so many hundreds of people would come to see her, sometimes every day, that there were some people, when she looked into their soul, there was a black wall that she couldn't see through. And others were as transparent as anything. This has always been something special for me, because she gave me a clue here when I wrote her once about this young boy. His name was Ivan, and he wanted me to accompany him to go to Europe. He said, we'll have great parties, meet all kinds of beautiful girls. You have to come with me. So I wrote to Mother. Mother wrote 2 words: better not. And when I went to see her, this whole long letter that I had written her, she began to go over it in sequence. After seeing thousands and thousands of people, she went through my letter in sequence. And when she got to that last fellow, she said something that I will never forget. She said, "It is best not to associate with people who live outside of themselves, as it were. It is better not to associate with people who live outside of themselves, as it were." And it is a kind of communion, this work. If you are fortunate enough to be conscious of an inner light, you will see that in your manual work, is that it is as if you call the divine down into things. Then the communion becomes very concrete. There is a whole world to be discovered. It is marvelous. This first came to me in the flowers. They would speak to me. I couldn't understand their language at first, but eventually I could communicate with them. If I told them how beautiful they were, they might even brighten up more. They would tell me physical things. Don't put me here. Put me in this kind of soil. Put me in this situation where there's so much sun, so much shade. I made many mistakes. And then I began to learn about their needs. And Mother says that their whole life is simply an aspiration for light. We can look at a forest and we can see that in this forest, the trees are all struggling for light, each one trying to get the maximum amount of light. And you know, when a forest burns down, an interesting thing happens in the next phase. There are seeds in the earth of what we call nurse trees. And these nurse trees are not very long-lived, but they shade the slow-growing hardwood trees. And so here in Aurobindo, we have the work tree. And I introduced the work tree to protect the hardwoods as they were coming up. And they did a wonderful job. People are very critical sometimes of the work trees, but we shouldn't be. After all, it's work. You have to remember that. It symbolizes work. It vibrates with the feeling of work. So Mother says now, you are young. You have plenty of time before you. And to be young, to be really young, we must always keep on growing, developing, progressing. Growth is the sign of youthfulness, and there is no limit to the growth of consciousness. I know old people of 20 and young people of 50, 60, 70. And if one does manual work, one keeps in good health. So now you must find the solution. That was Mother on 24th March 1970. Now this is another meeting. Mother says, "Come in," and she laughs. Those who enter offer flowers to the mother. Pointing to the flower, Mother arranges the flowers and distributes them. While giving service and transformation flowers, she remarks, "It is service which leads to transformation." I mean it seriously. When you go to the Samadhi, always say a prayer to Mother for the service tree, that it may live thousands and thousands of years and teach service to all who come under its shade. I pray that every time, never forget, because I've had a 37-year personal relationship with it. And I think I told you about a lot of that last time. But this tree is so special. For me, without any question, it is the most sacred tree in all the world. And the Aurobindo banyan is the second most sacred in all the world. Mother speaks to those who will come to see her once a week about Aurobindo. She says, "I am going to set two conditions. To want to progress, that is really a moderate condition. To want to progress, to know that everything is yet to be done, everything is yet to be conquered." Now this is in 1970. The second condition, to do something every day, some activity, some work, anything, something which is not for oneself, and above all, something which is an expression of goodwill for all. You are a group, aren't you? Simply to show that you do not live solely for yourselves, as if you were at the center of the universe, and the whole universe had to revolve around you. That is how it is for the vast majority of people, and they don't even know it. Each one should become aware that spontaneously one puts oneself at the center of the universe and wants everything to come to oneself, just like that, in one way or another. But one should make an effort to recognize the existence of the whole. That's all. It is to widen one's consciousness, just to become a little less tiny. So, those who adhere to my program will come once a week, in turn. Is that all right? To see. As for you, I shall give you a rose for your mother, because she likes them very much. So you will give her this, and you will come. You should not come on the same day, because it takes too much time. What day? Monday is all right, Friday too. Which day is more convenient for you, Mother says. Monday, sweet mother. So on Monday, you will bring me news of your gardening. Very good. We must have a beautiful garden. Well then, is it all right? I shall see you next Tuesday with someone, anyone. It's all the same to me. You can just tell me when he comes. Those who want to progress and who think that the world is vaster than themselves than their own consciousness. The young boy, the young Tamil boy who is coming, what are you teaching him? English or French? Answer. Oh, for the moment, we're not really teaching him anything. Mother. Poor little fellow, you simply put him to work. Answer. Oh no, not only that. Another one says to mother, they feed him as well, sweet mother. Mother says, gradually, as he comes more often, we will organize something and teach him French. Then she goes on. I think most of you have not heard any of this, have you? Any of you? No. You heard?
Yeah, there are these two books of mother talking about Aurobindo and Reverend.
Very good, very good. She says, you must involve him in the life there, and then it would be interesting. When children hear you speak, they want to know what is being said, and they learn the language. Indians are wonderful at learning languages. They can learn 4 or 5 languages without mixing them up. This young boy would learn very well. It would be a good thing. See, she already sees everything in that child. And she says he would learn very well. She knew all of us like an open book. I am going to give each of you a packet to keep the contact. You are familiar with these packets? You must keep the packet. There are some petals, flower petals inside, but they are charged with force. And if you keep them upon you, the contact with me is kept. So if you refer inside, when you withdraw, if you refer inside, you can reestablish the contact and even have an answer to a question. I'm going to stop for here and read some Savitri. Because of this time of our life, when we have only every 4 years the supramental descent, it is good to read Savitri every day. The Lord is speaking to Savitri. O beautiful body of the incarnate Word, thy thoughts are mine. I have spoken with thy voice. My will is thine. What thou hast chosen, I choose. All thou hast asked, I give to earth and men. All shall be written out in destiny's book by my trustee of thought and plan and act, the executor of my will, eternal time. But since thou hast refused my nameless calm and turned from my termless peace, in which is expunged the visage of space, and the shape of time is lost, and from happy extinction of thy separate self, in my uncompanioned lone eternity, for not for thee, the nameless, worldless Lord, annihilation of thy living soul, and the end of thought and hope and life and love in the blank, measureless, unknowable. That's all one sentence. Because thou hast obeyed my timeless will, I lay my hands upon thy soul of flame. I lay my hands upon thy heart of love. I yoke thee to my power of work in time. Because thou hast obeyed my timeless will, because thou hast chosen to share earth's struggle and fate, and leaned in pity over earthbound men, and turned aside to help and yearned to save, I bind by thy heart's passion thy heart to mine, and lay my splendid yoke upon thy soul. Twice we have seen the word yoke. What is yoke?
Cling together.
Hmm?
Cling together.
Now, what is a yoke actually?
It's inside the egg.
No.
No,
Not that.
Y-O-K-E.
The vehicle or with connect the carriage connects the horse, that is yoking.
Yes. Usually they say it connects the two bullocks.
Ah,
So the yoke is actually the divine's connection to us. And now the Lord is saying to Savitri, I bind by thy heart's passion thy heart to mine, and lay my splendid yoke upon your soul, upon thy soul. And then the Lord goes on and he says, now will I do in thee my marvelous works. I will fasten thy nature with my cords of strength, subdue to my delight thy spirit's limbs, and make thee a vivid knot of all my bliss, and build in thee my proud and crystal home. Thy days shall be my shafts of power and light, thy nights my starry mysteries of joy, and all my clouds lie tangled in thy hair, and all my springtides marry in thy mouth. O sunward, thou shalt raise the earth soul to light, and bring God down, and bring down God into the lives of men. Earth shall be my work chamber and my house, my garden of life, to plant a seed divine. When all thy work in human time is done, the mind of earth shall be a home of light. The life of earth, a tree growing towards heaven. The body of earth, a tabernacle of God.